Explain intent in criminal law. Intent is important in criminal law because it forms part of the mens rea, the mental element of a crime. For a defendant to be guilty, the prosecution must usually prove both the actus reus and the mens rea. Intent means the defendant understood the purpose of their actions. There is direct intent, where the defendant aims to cause the result, and indirect or oblique intent, where the result is not the aim but is known to be a virtual certainty. Intent is judged subjectively, based on what the defendant actually knew. In a v. Wool in 1998, the court held that intent can be found if death or serious injury was a virtual certainty and the defendant realized this. The jury may consider what a reasonable person would have realized, but the focus is on the defendant's own state of mind. Describe the role of the jury. The jury plays an important role in the UK legal system, mainly in criminal trials in the Crown Court. A jury is made up of 12 members of the public who are randomly selected from the electoral register. The main role of the jury is to decide the facts of the case. This means they listen to the evidence from the prosecution and defense and decide whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty. The jury does not decide the law, this is done by the judge. The judge explains the law and sums up the evidence, but the final decision on guilt is made by the jury. The jury normally must reach a unanimous verdict, but if this is not possible, a majority verdict such as 10-2 may be accepted. Jurors are used for serious criminal cases tried in the Crown Court, such as murder. Their role allows public involvement in the justice system and helps ensure fair trials. Describe the mischief rule of statutory interpretation. The mischief rule is a rule of statutory interpretation used by UK judges to discover Parliament's intention. It originates from Hayden's case 1584, where judges were required to identify the problem in the previous law that Parliament intended to remedy. The rule allows judges to interpret legislation purposively, even if this departs from the literal meaning, in order to suppress the mischief and advance the remedy. In Smith v. Hughes 1960, the Street Offences Act 1959 made it illegal for prostitutes to solicit in a street. The defendants solicited from windows and balconies. The court used the mischief rule and decided Parliament's intention was to prevent harassment of people in the street, so the defendants were guilty. Non-fatal offences are negligence, fully compiled notes, detailed but audio safe. Top mark ready. Part 1, Non-Fatal Offences. Criminal law. Non-fatal offences protect individuals from violence and range from minor common law offences to serious statutory offences under the Offences Against the Person Act 1861. The appropriate charge depends on the actus reus, mens rea, and the level of harm suffered. Assault. Common law. Actus reus. Assault is causing the victim to apprehend immediate unlawful violence. No physical contact is required, but the victim must fear that violence is about to occur. This was established in a v. Lamb, where there was no assault because the victim did not apprehend immediate violence. Mens rea. The mens rea is intentional recklessness as to causing the victim to apprehend immediate unlawful violence. Victim advice. If the victim felt threatened and believed violence was imminent, assault may be appropriate even without physical contact. Battery. Common law. Actus reus. Battery is the application of unlawful force to another person. The level of force required is very low and can include minor touching. This was established in Collins v. Wilcock, where grabbing someone's arm was held to be battery. Mens rea. The mens rea is intentional recklessness as to applying unlawful force. Victim. Unwanted physical contact may amount to battery, even if no injury occurs. Actual bodily harm. Section 47 OPA 1861. Actus reus. The actus reus of ABH is an assault or battery that causes actual bodily harm. Actual bodily harm includes injury that interferes with the victim's health or comfort and is more than trivial, as established in DPP v. Smith. Recognized psychiatric injury may also amount to ABH, though emotions such as fear or distress alone are insufficient, as established in a v. Chanfuk. Mens rea. The mens rea is intentional recklessness as to the assault or battery. There is no requirement that the defendant intended or foresaw actual bodily harm. Victim advice: where the victim suffers cuts, bruises, swelling, or recognized psychological injury, Section 47 is usually the most appropriate charge. Grievous bodily harm, Section 20 OPA 1861 Actus Reus. Section 20 involves unlawfully and maliciously wounding or inflicting grievous bodily harm. Grievous bodily harm means really serious harm, as established in DPP v. Smith. A wound requires a break in the continuity of the skin, as established in Moriarty v. Brooks. Mens rea: the mens rea is malice, meaning the defendant must intend or foresee some harm, though not necessarily serious harm. This follows the subjective recklessness tests. Victim advice: if the victim suffers really serious injuries or deep cuts, but intent to cause GBH cannot be proven, Section 20 is likely to be appropriate. Grievous bodily harm with intent, Section 18 OPA 1861 Actus Reus. The actus reus is unlawfully wounding or causing grievous bodily harm. Mens rea: the mens rea is specific intent to cause grievous bodily harm. Intent may be direct intent, where causing harm is the defendant's aim, as established in v. Mohan, or oblique intent, where serious harm is a virtual certainty and the defendant appreciates this, as established in v. Woolen. Victim 18 is the most serious non-fatal offense and applies where there is clear evidence of deliberate intent, such as the use of a weapon or a targeted attack. General criminal law principles: recklessness is subjective, meaning the defendant must foresee the risk and go on to take it, as established in v. Cunningham. Transferred malice applies where the defendant intends to harm one person but injures another, as established in v. Latimer. Defenses: criminal possible defenses include self-defense, reasonable force, intoxication, which may reduce specific intent offenses, insanity, automatism, and duress, though these depend on the facts. Part 2, Negligence. Civil law. Negligence allows victims to claim financial compensation, unlike criminal law which focuses on punishment. Definition of negligence: negligence is failing to act as a reasonable person would, or doing something a reasonable person would not do, as established in Blythe v. Birmingham Water Works. Duty of care: a duty of care arises where harm is reasonably foreseeable and there is sufficient proximity. The neighbor principle was established in Donahue v. Stevenson, which states that a person owes a duty to those closely and directly affected by their actions. The modern approach was confirmed in Robinson v. Chief Constable of West Yorkshire Police, where the courts emphasized reliance on established duty categories. Breach of duty: a breach of duty occurs when the defendant falls below the required standard of care. The general test is the standard of the reasonable person in the circumstances. For professionals, the Boland test applies. A professional is not negligent if they act in accordance with the responsible body of professional opinion, as established in Bolam v. Friern Hospital Management Committee. Causation: factual causation. The but-for test: factual causation is established using the but-for tests. The court asks, but for the defendant's breach of duty, would the harm have occurred anyway? If the harm would not have occurred, causation is satisfied. If it would have occurred regardless, causation fails. This was established in Barnett v. Chelsea. Legal causation and remoteness: the harm must not be too remote. The eggshell skull rule applies, meaning the defendant must take the victim as they find them and is liable for the full extent of harm, as established in Smith v. Leach-Brain. Defenses: civil valenti non fit injuria, where the claimant freely consented to the risk. Contributory negligence, where the claimant failed to take reasonable care and damages may be reduced, as established in Goff v. Thorne. Remedies: the main remedy is damages, which aim to restore the claimant to the position they would have been in but for the harm, as established in Livingston v. Royards Coal Company. General damages cover pain, suffering, loss of immunity, and future losses. Special damages cover financial losses such as medical expenses and loss of earnings.